everyone, this is the Movie Maniac. Thank you for watching, and today we are talking about my top 10 films of 2019. A couple of things we need to mention first, and one is that I do these lists in alphabetical order. I just feel like it's just too much to say this movie is slightly better than this one and slightly above that. It just gets chaotic, so I just do the fair thing and put them from A to Z. Two is I'm going to talk about these very briefly. If you want a more expansive review, I'm going to include any of these that I've reviewed in the top 10 in the description below. Feel free to click on those and have fun watching them. I also haven't seen every film this year, but I have watched the magic number of movies that I require myself to see before I'm allowed to make a top 10 list. I've not only met that number, I've exceeded it, but there are still some films out there that I didn't get around to. I haven't seen Peanut Butter Falcon for one, and there's other movies like that that I just thought could be something special, but I've seen enough and I feel confident making this list. But just don't expect it to look like everyone else's, because I don't bow to the tastemakers. I don't bow to social pressure. I don't give in for fear of it looking different. Have no shame in what you love. So to kick this off, we're going to go down the honorable mentions list. Captain Marvel, a surprising and satisfying entry in the MCU. Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the definition of a fun popcorn flick. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, a beautiful and heartfelt way to wrap up the series. It, Chapter 2, a nearly 3-hour runtime that you don't feel, and it actually took a campy tone this time around. Bravo for that. The Lion King, directed by Jon Favreau. It's a photorealistic remake of the original Disney classic. Terminator Dark Fate. The first half of this movie is absolutely thrilling and gripping. It is an R-rated sequel to Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Triple Frontier, a 50-50 blend of war film and action movie. So those are the 7 titles that made my honorable mentions list this year. Why do I pick 7? Because if we have a top 10, it just feels cheap to then say here are 10 more that aren't in the top 10. I like the number 7. I've been using this strategy for years, and I feel like it's a good way to build that top 10 and complement it with an honorable mentions list. Let's get right to it. And just a reminder, this list is in alphabetical order. So, first up, Avengers In Game, one of the most impressive cinematic achievements of the decade. You had nearly 21 movies leading up to this. I love the way the previous titles in this series were revisited. It has one of the most emotional character deaths on screen, and it knows how to juggle so much in its runtime that you have to give credit to the filmmakers for being able to even sort of pull something like this off. But not only do they sort of do it, they hit a home run with Endgame. Giving that one a 9 out of 10, one of the best of the year. Crawl, directed by Alexandre Aja. You really have to give him credit for pulling this off, because it could have been a dumb piece of crap, and instead, he made it one of the most compelling movies in this genre in quite some time. It's a survival horror, a creature feature, a hurricane movie, all rolled into one. They all blend together so seamlessly. I knew this film had me when I realized just how much I cared about its 3 main characters, and hoping and making sure and staying with them, wanting them to get out alive, and that's the sign of a good horror movie. And yes, if you're wondering, I do feel slightly vindicated by having Quentin Tarantino refer to this picture as his favorite movie of 2019. Glass, possibly my most controversial pick in this top 10 list, but I'll tell you what, I really like the way M. Night starts this movie and brings us back into the world of Unbreakable and Split. The way he slows down the middle of this movie so we can catch up with these characters and spend time with them was much needed. I know the ending of this film is very polarizing, but for me I really liked it because not only did M. Night throw in an additional twist, but it helped justify the middle of this movie and basically the entire plot for what you're watching. The Irishman. This is one of Scorsese's best movies. I actually think it might be better than Casino and Goodfellas, if you can believe that. Now here's the thing. I am doing an alphabetical list, but if you had to make me pick one movie that stood out as the best of the year, it would more than likely be The Irishman. The only other one I could maybe even think of nominating would be Avengers In Game, This just absolutely steals the show with its performances from Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino. The digital de-aging is so great, and everything about this, you just have to see it for yourself. It just has so much of the human condition with this world and getting insights into it and seeing how it operates. There's so many questions surrounding the things that happen here versus what happened in real life. Some people believe this story 100%. Some people think that maybe it's been slightly fabricated, but that's beyond the point, and that's part of what makes it so great. This is near perfect. If somebody actually said to me that this is a perfect film, I don't think I would argue with them on that. That is the level of filmmaking we're talking about that's on display here. John Wick Chapter 3. This has the most action out of any of the movies in the franchise. And it does dive a little deeper into the mythology that's been set up here. And the memorable scene with the two attack dogs. If you were lucky enough to see this in the theater opening weekend, I'm sure that everyone in that audience went absolutely nuts for these dogs and that whole sequence. Even if this isn't your favorite in the series, you are going to remember that scene. And I love how every single time they try and resolve the issues that he's going through and they try and put the cat back in the bag, they keep accidentally ripping the bag open and then the cat's out again. I appreciate the way they utilize Ian McShane's character, Winston, more than we might expect. Joker. You probably knew this was on the list. This is a film that does have Martin Scorsese vibes in it. We just did The Irishman a couple ones back, and it's definitely here. You also get some Darren Aronofsky vibes going on throughout. Joaquin Phoenix gives the performance of a lifetime. Every once in a while you see something like this and you think, wow, this actor was born to play this character. Joker is an example of that. Actually, the previous movie, John Wick, and Keanu Reeves playing that character is an example of that. The way they strike the tone in Joker is just flawless. I think the first half of that movie is damn near perfect. Sure, there are some missteps and the little issues here and there that are going on in the second half, but there are also some great things about it as well. This is another picture where if somebody said that this was the best movie of 2019, even though I might be tempted to side a little bit closer with The Irishman, I don't think I'd argue with them, because Joker is just that incredible. Marriage Story. Wow, this might be the biggest surprise of the year, and I'll tell you why, because I didn't hear a whole lot of people talking about it up until its release, and then we really saw just how emotional and well-crafted the story of this couple going through this separation and getting their divorce ready really is. If you've ever wondered about Adam Driver and his abilities to give a strong performance, watch Marriage Story, because I'll tell you something that's interesting. The scenes that got me watery-eyed, that basically even brought me to tears, they weren't the scenes with Scarlett Johansson, though she's great too. It was with Adam Driver. That's how much he sells this movie. And who would have thought that the pairing of Black Widow and Kylo Ren would be so effective? If you haven't seen Marriage Story yet, give this a watch. I'd be curious to know if it is your biggest surprise of 2019. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino, who is a cinematic genius, is back with his latest, and there's so much going on underneath the surface that I think that this is going to appear in cinema studies classes for quite a while. You'll probably hear people say that Brad Pitt is giving the performance of his career as this character, Cliff Booth. And Brad Pitt really shows his acting chops here. This is another one of those roles, and we've had a few of them this year, where actors born to play certain characters, we've gotten those movies in 2019. I don't think this is an exception. I think this is definitely one of those films. There's also some self-reflection going on with Tarantino. This is a lot to get into. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just know this, that it is a great picture. If you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino, definitely give this a watch. I'm not going to tell you it's exactly like his other movies in his filmography. It is a little different, and that's okay. It still has his touch. From beginning to end, he's using the Tarantino paintbrush, and it definitely shows, and I say that in the most complimentary way imaginable. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. I loved this movie. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. The Star Wars Cinematic Universe and the Alien Cinematic Universe are my two favorite ones out there, and I think the way that JJ was able to correct a lot of the missteps that happened in the sequel trilogy, the way he was able to introduce Emperor Palpatine and utilize him, how he was able to bring all of the different characters that had been kind of separated and pulled apart in the previous two movies and actually just have them together, and let a lot of the fanfare from the original trilogy shine, but also tying it in with the sequel trilogy for a younger generation was great. And I know this isn't for everyone. I know Star Wars fandom has become extremely divisive. People say that it's toxic. It's certainly passionate, and for me, I'm passionate about this movie. I loved it. I know not everyone else did, but this hit all the right notes for me. This did exactly what I wanted the end of the sequel trilogy to do. And I know other people had different expectations, but you know what? Like I said, never be ashamed of what you love. Last but certainly not least, Zombieland Double Tap. I know this one's going to get me some weird stares, but I don't care because I loved watching this. I think it's quite an achievement to have a sequel to this movie 10 years later not only be as good, but possibly better than the original, which does have a strong cult following. It has no fear of breaking the Hollywood rule book. It has a lot of fun just jumping in and it's on its own agenda, and it doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And I think that that's just something that you really feel while watching it. And I think it's hard to do comedies well. I think comedies are often best suited to a short film format or a 30-minute TV episode. So to have a feature film where I'm laughing from beginning, middle to end, that's a hard thing to pull off. We're not getting as many zombie movies lately, and I understand that because the whole market for that became oversaturated for quite a while, so we need a break. To get something like Zombieland Double Tap was refreshing. It has a lot of fun. It's also really creative in its zombie kills, and it's a pretty well-made movie. Now, if you were to tell me that Zombieland 2 Double Tap would end up in my top 10 of 2019, I would tell you that you don't understand my cinematic taste. And sure, horror is in my top 3 favorite genres: action, sci-fi, and horror. I just tend to gravitate to those first. So, yeah, I could understand maybe thinking that, but in my mind, I would say that this would be an honorable mention at best, and it would be lucky to end up there. So for it to make my top 10 of the year, that means that there's something special going on here, at least in my mind. It's just a huge surprise for me, and actually the people I talked to were really blown away that I liked it so much because they figured I would just probably give it a 6.5 and just say it was all right, or yeah, I guess it was good. I really liked this. Very excited to give it a revisit. Well, I hope that was fun. I hope it was unpredictable. Were any of my films in the top 10 correlating with yours? Actually, do me a favor. Tell me the movies I picked that you think I'm absolutely crazy for including, because I know there's going to be some. Again, my taste, everyone's different. What appeals to me on certain levels might not appeal to you. What I get out of something, you may not have received. So that is the interesting thing about film. Sure, it's like a shared dream. It's the closest thing to that. But at the same time, every individual is so unique that the way they experience a movie is going to be so dramatically different. That's why I think people have a real connection when they get together on something that they love, like a picture that just absolutely is one of their favorites of all time. That's a great thing to be able to share. And even if you think a movie sucks and you run across somebody else who feels the exact same way, you have that bond. So let me know in the comments what your top 10 movies of the year were, or what you agreed and disagreed with me on. I'm just really interested to explore this. Now, my friends, you know what's next. 2020. Will it live up to 2019? Will the list look a lot different? Will it look similar genre-wise, just swapped out with different titles? I don't know. You never know going to each of these years. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And as always, make sure to smash that notification bell, like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay inside the mind of a movie maniac.